This is Gabriela on the scene today with Talk Network Radio. We have a real treat for you just around the corner, and that is Empowered Living with Jeff Byrd. Jeff is the owner of Jeffrey Byrd Coaching, and he will be coming to you weekly to teach you more about empowered living.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jeff Byrd with Jeffrey Byrd Coaching, and I'm so pleased that you tuned in to Empowered Living today. So recently, we've been in a series about growth, cultivating the seed of our idea, our mindset, our beliefs. And we've been comparing that to growing a seed into a viable plant that can produce fruit, bear flowers, be what it's meant to be. And today we're going to talk about what I think is probably my least favorite, but an absolutely essential part of that process. And this is pruning. Pruning. Now, when it comes to, some plants, there's if it's diseased, dead, or damaged, you just want to get rid of it. Now, it's not that hard to prune off those parts. Those parts will attract insects. They will rot the plant. They'll do a lot of bad things. So when you got something that's dead, diseased, or damaged, it's not hard to prune that off, right? We just clip that, throw it away, and it's good to go. When it really gets difficult is when those new shoots start coming up. Those plants are reaching for the sky. They're thriving. They're doing well, and you have to cut off that part. That just kills me. And now, I've told you before, if you might have heard me say that my wife is a much better gardener than I. And sometimes a plant that just looks like it's doing so well, I'll come back and it's just like she's just cut it back to almost nothing. And I'm like, what are you doing? What? It was doing so well. And she'll say, but it's never going to become its best unless we cut that back. It's just not going to become its best. It would have had some flowers, it would have had some fruit, but it's not going to thrive, and it's not going to be full, and it's not going to reach its potential unless we cut it back. And it's hard to watch. We just did that to a beautiful butterfly bush yesterday. It was just coming out. It had this the tallest stalk, and it was just growing upward and reaching out, and we just had to cut it back. Because we didn't want this big spindly bush with a couple of big limbs and nothing else. We want that thing to round out and become full and become rich and to have lots of blossoms to attract the butterflies and the other pollinators. So we had to do some pruning. And boy, and it's painful. And again, if we could take our human emotion and put it on the plant, it must be like, what on earth? Here I've been dormant all winter. I've been waiting for a chance to grow. Here I am growing. I'm shooting for the sun and the sky and getting ready to burst out into bloom, and you cut me off. Wow, how discouraging and depressing. And we all know it because I think probably most of us, if not all of us, have experienced that in our lives. Might have been in a relationship. Might have been in a job, might have been in a goal, and we had high hopes, and we were reaching for those hopes, and boom, they just got cut off. They just got shattered. Maybe there was a loss, maybe there was a breakup, maybe there was a pandemic. I've got some friends that I was so happy for. They just started businesses, and then this pandemic came along, and very negatively affected them. And now it's going on it seems like it's been a long time now. Even for my wife and I, we had been through a slow spell and things were just starting to pick back up, and we were getting a lot of stuff scheduled for the spring. And then boom, COVID comes along and wiped all of it out. And it's like, wow, what's going on? What's going on? Pruning is difficult. And even in the Bible, in the book of John, in chapter 15, Jesus talks about pruning. And he says that every plant that's bearing fruit, my Father, God, is going to prune and cut back so that it can bear more fruit. Not to destroy it, not to hurt it, not to discourage it, not to depress it, not to harm it, but so that it can bear more fruit. That's the purpose of pruning, is to increase the fruitfulness. Now, boy, it can hurt. But what happens is when part of our life gets pruned away, it can just destroy us and we can just shut down. And that's not the goal. The goal is it causes us to, we're all focused on the outward growth, the upward growth. But what it does is it causes us to reach down under the soil where all the magic really happens, and to dig deeper roots, to reach those roots out farther, to bring in more nutrients, and to push up and out in ways that we had not imagined before. So when this pruning comes, if we let it, and it's always our choice, if we let it, it can cause us to dig deeper for resources. It can get us connected better to people who can help us, who can bring good thinking to us. It can enhance, if you're a person of faith, it may enhance your prayer life and the time you spend seeking wisdom and asking God to show you, hey, what's really going on in this season? Let me not look at it with my wisdom. I want your wisdom on this. And it can cause us to dig more deeply into resources. It can also, if we handle it wrong, it can cause us just to try to escape everything and just maintain some level of being comforted, comfortability. To pick your favorite word, but comfort's at the root of it. It can cause us to do that, or it can really cause us to grow. And in the previous one on hardening off, I talked about what some of the benefits of that hardening and that growth are. But I just want to talk about the pruning, because what it can do is, and what we hope that it does, is it causes us to dig deeper, to reach out. We may be cut off from the above ground growth, right? From the outward evident growth. But that doesn't mean that we're cut off from the underground, the unseen growth, what happens on the inside, what happens in our minds, what happens in our hearts, that nobody may be able to see at the time until we get promoted up. We've learned some things, and now we're more equipped to help and to be a resource and to be a leader than ever before. Okay, so I've got a few things I want to give you about pruning, a few things to remember here. And the first thing is, again, so we want to remember, as we're pruned off at the top, as that growth and that, direction's cut away, that doesn't mean that we're hindered underneath. I've never heard of a gardener that dug a plant up and just started cutting the roots off, right? They cut the outward manifestation off, but not the unseen growth down there, right? So what we want to, number one, as we go deeper, we take in more than we imagined was there for us. And maybe that's in time that we spend reflecting on what's happened. Maybe that's in time we spend seeking wisdom from above or from others, or reading books, or listening to podcasts, or taking classes, or discussing possibilities and opportunities with our friends. Some friends of mine, I've seen them collaborate with some other people in ways they had never thought of before, and create new resources and do new things that probably would never have happened were it not for this current pandemic that we're having. There is more than we've thought of before. When we're growing in one direction, we're only thinking about one thing, whatever that current direction is. When that gets cut off, like in pruning, then we start thinking about new directions, and often broader ones. We become more fruitful, more connected, more engaged. Okay, number two, as we, and I kind of touched on that, as we embrace the pruning and we tap into those new resources, there's just new growth. There's new ideas, right? If I'm in a tight spot and I come up with not one idea about how I might handle that, and then I get together with you and you have an idea, well, now I've got an idea and you've got an idea, so we both got two ideas, and probably as we discuss it, another idea or more will come up. Now we got multiple ideas about what to do and how to handle it, right? So there's new doors that can be opened, new opportunities that can come up. The pruning is not the end. Again, it's not cutting the roots off. It's cutting off the direction on the outside so that we can expand into multiple new directions. Okay. Number three, as we take in more, we gain the ability and vision to reach out in more ways than we have settled for. One of my wife Angie and I, we have a favorite quote that's from the Mad Hatter, and he in the movie Alice in Wonderland, he says to Alice, "You've lost your muchiness," and so we talk about being muchier, and as we take in these things, and as we get more vision, we become muchier, right? We're no longer that man of one idea. Now we're a man of multiple ideas. We don't just have one direction we're shooting in. Now we're open to multiple new directions. We've become muchier. So pruning makes us muchier. So thank you, Lewis Carroll and the Mad Hatter, and Johnny Depp too. Number 4, as we become muchier, we're able to produce more that feeds both ourselves and others. If you have a plant in your garden, say a tomato, again, those are so common. If you have a tomato and it bears like 3 tomatoes, well, you might have a nice salad with somebody. If it bears just a bush full of tomatoes, now you can have a bunch of nice salads, and you can give some to somebody else and they can have nice salads. So it pays to be branching out in more directions. And sometimes those directions aren't clear yet. I feel that way personally right now. Sometimes there's a waiting stage as we're being pruned. But because the new growth is not instantaneous, it takes some time, but you'll start seeing those little new branches come up and start growing and start bearing fruit. And at that time, you may see what the purpose was for the pruning all along. It may not be evident up front and immediately. And also, number 5, and this is the last one, we may become promoted and more sought after. As we develop good thinking in the difficult times, in the pruning times, as we develop our roots, as we develop new growth, as we develop more fruit, we may become more sought after. It's like, wow, this guy, this girl, boy, they're responding pretty well. Somebody might come along and say, hey, I'd like a pint of what you're drinking. What's going on? We might produce something new. We might write a book. We might, there's no telling to what we might do that helps other people. And people might be like, wow, this is good. This is good. I hope some of the things I'm sharing about this as I've been thinking about them, you think, wow, that's encouraging. That would encourage me to know that you've been encouraged. And so we can become more, we become muchier. And that's the point of pruning. To wrap this up today, I would encourage you, and a lot of us are going through a pruning season. There's no denying that. But as we're pruning, just think back on that verse in John where Jesus says, everybody that's bearing fruit, if you've got some good coming out, it's going to get pruned so that you can bear more fruit. And the whole purpose, don't get stuck. Please don't get stuck. And I'm going to do my best not to get stuck too. Let's not get stuck on the things that have been cut back, but let's get stuck on the vision of the new growth and what can be, and develop those roots downward, because those never get pruned. Let's develop those contexts, develop that greater reach, take in more good thinking, take in more ideas, take in more conversation, take in more books, take in more whatever you can get a hold of that's helping you, and come up with new fruit and new growth that can help both ourselves and the people around us. Not an easy task, but it is an essential task. It's painful to watch those branches get cut away. I can't wait to see the new growth on our butterfly bush, but it's essential, because now I've got more hope. Even though I don't see that growth, I have more hope for a beautiful, thick, rich, full butterfly bush and more butterflies in the garden than I did before we cut it back, which is the very reason that we cut it back, because we had a vision of what lay ahead and would come out of the pruning process. Thanks so much for joining me. Feel free to reach out to me if there's anything I can help with. If you've got questions or comments, I'm Jeff at jeffbyrdcoaching.com. Bird is with a Y. Jeff at jeffbyrdcoaching.com. I'd love to hear from you. And